But it leads me to my next point. Actually, no. My next point is that one of the clever filming techniques, because I mean, it's sad. It really saddens me that like such a racist movie is considered like the first ever movie that wrote the movie language that we know of today. And during one of the battle scenes, they use red filter, to portray, when there's fire, to make it the audience more aware that there's fire in the scene. And it really it was, I would say, that's clever for the time period, because they'd never done it before, so obviously it's going to look amazing to those people that saw the movie. And lots of people saw this movie. Like, it ran for 44 weeks in New York City, and like I can't get over that, because I guess maybe people weren't just aware of the KKK or something like that, or something to that effect. Because like, why would somebody these days? I mean, you release this movie these days, there'd be riots and boycotting and everything. They would probably, all the African Americans would be out to get D.W. Griffith's head on a platter. I mean, it was just, but for its time, I mean, I suppose it was just a different time back then, and people, I guess, just weren't aware of like the racism that was involved with the KKK and all that. But I think people, after this movie was released, were very much aware of the KKK and the whole racist aspect of this entire movie. And then moving on to my next part of the whole filmmaking aspect of this movie is the terrible battle scenes. Oh my God, the amount of smoke that was used during this movie. Just I had to not. I think I got lung cancer, like, from the amount of smoke. Because obviously they had to hide the pretty much empty battlefields, because they only had they didn't have like the kind of numbers that were going on, like thousands upon thousands of troops that were fighting, during the Civil War in any single battle, And there's a couple little things I noticed during these battle scenes. They're just so like bad by today's standards. Is a couple little things I noticed was like one Confederate soldier doesn't have a shirt on. I started laughing my ass off over that. I was like, why doesn't he have a shirt? I mean, even in the movie Gettysburg, even the most ragged of troops, had clothing on. They might have not had shoes, but they had shirts at least. I mean, it was just funny to see that. And during one of the charging sequences, it's so funny. There's this guy, he's blowing a bugle in like every single shot, and like he doesn't even have a rifle. All he has is a bugle, and I laughed my ass off. It's like, why is this guy blowing a bugle? And then of course there's this one famous shot, from the movie itself, is when the brother of the Camerons, he comes across another brother. There's two brothers each from each family, and he charges the northern brothers men. He somehow survives hundreds of troops firing guns at him, and he's able to jam a Confederate flag into a cannon. It was just totally absurd to me, which leads me to more absurdity. Is that the brother of the Stonemans ends up meeting the sister who he had never met before in the hospital. The sister of the Stonemans in the hospital, because she was a nurse there, and that was just totally absurd to me. They're like, how many people fought in the Civil War? I mean, I'm going to Google it right now and find out how many people fought in the Civil War. I'm actually Googling it right now. Civil War statistics. Hold on. The Civil War, America's bloodiest conflict, cost nearly 1,100,000 lives, casualties, and it claimed over 620,000 people. And you want me to believe, even back in 1915, that these two were able to meet each other in a freaking hospital? no freaking way that I can suspend disbelief for that one. I mean, that's just not friggin' possible. I'm not suspending disbelief for this one, because first off, the guy was in a charge with hundreds of people firing, at him, and it was just, absurd. Like, how could he possibly survive that? And even more so, we don't even know how badly he's wounded. I mean, chances are he was going to die anyway. If you got wounded, the medical practices back there were horrible. I mean, you die from infection or any number of possibilities you could have died. I mean, it was just one of those things that was totally absurd. But it had to, they had to do it, obviously for story's sake. But just it's total absurdity when you think about it, of the amount of people that fought in the Civil War. Okay, moving on. Kind of a stark contrast type of deal when the Southern soldier Cameron goes back home. He when he returns home, it's much different. The streets are totally empty, no parades, no nothing, and it's just it was one of the couple shots that weren't wasn't racist in any aspect. It just the stark contrast of it was just it was a nice little moment in the movie, and that's not saying much for this movie, and there hardly were any moments to this movie. And another brings me to another part of this movie that I enjoyed. Is just like maybe this was it. I mean, as far as truth to this movie, I mean, the truth to this movie was the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, which brings me back to another point. Is how lifelike this guy looked like Abraham Lincoln. I mean, when I was watching the whole assassination part of the movie, I thought like, oh, it's like the Zapruder film where Kennedy gets assassinated, and like it was just like it was down to the funny hat he wore. Is that how lifelike how much this guy looked like the real Abraham Lincoln? It was just like the only thing I think was missing is just him wearing one of those funny hats. It was just amazing, and like watching the whole assassination, it was like the only truth in this whole movie was Lincoln getting assassinated. I mean, it's a horrible thing, to say, oh, that was the only part of the movie I enjoyed, is Lincoln getting assassinated, because it seems all real, like it was actual footage from from 1865 when he was killed. So anyway, moving on. Then, which brings us to the second part of the movie, Reconstruction, and there's this weird quote from they claim it's from Woodrow Wilson, and like, but the way the quote has to do with like how like the South rose up against the blacks and kept them from a rule of anarchy, and like I was like, Woodrow Wilson really said that? I mean, I'm not gonna Google it right now because it would probably take a little while to figure it out, but it just seemed really weird that like a president would say something like that bad, like that. I mean, it's racist, to say that, and it's not true at all. I mean, that's not what they were doing during Reconstruction. I mean, they had abolished slavery. Lincoln had freed the slaves. The Union had won the Civil War, and they were just trying to rebuild. I mean, they weren't trying to take over. They weren't trying to. It's just a horrible portrayal of like how like it's just totally absurd, and like it was horrible to see how they portrayed the blacks in this movie, and it was sickening. And then they even had the Camerons. They come down to the Stomans. They come down to the South, during their whole Reconstruction period. There's a guy named Lynch. He's an abolitionist, and he gets elected to the state senate or something, the government in South Carolina. And they come down. They bring their servants into the Cameron's mansion, and the two servants, who both are played by white actors wearing blackface, so it's horrible in that sense. They start fighting with each other, and I'm just like, this is horrible. I mean, how racist could this movie get? And like, believe me, you ain't heard nothing yet.